And I was brought up in a very old-fashioned way in a very rural, small village in West Wales called Mynydd Cerrig. If you translate Mynydd Cerrig to English, it translates to Mountain of Stone, and that's pretty much what it was. Small village with about 140 people in the whole village. We all spoke Welsh, every single one of us. Welsh was the language used every day, every night. I couldn't speak English until I was taught it in school, and I didn't actually start conversing in English until I was about 7, 8 years of age, when a couple of non-Welsh speaking families moved into the village and who had kids my age. It's changed a lot today. It's probably about 55% of the village now is fluent Welsh speaking. And I was brought up in this small village in West Wales in the 1970s. And if you want to imagine what being brought up in West Wales was like in the 1970s, then go there now. Because nothing's changed. Went to the primary school, only about 14, 15 of us in the whole school, 2 classes, 2 teachers. I then left the primary school at 11 years of age. I was the last age in Wales to do the 11 plus. And if you passed the 11 plus, you'd go to a grammar school. If you failed it, you'd go to education in a second mod school. How I passed the 11 plus, I'll never know, but I did. And then I went to the Gwyndraeth Grammar School, and I was the last year of the grammar schools because the grammar schools were phased out in Wales back in 1982-83. And then you had a choice of doing education through the medium of English or through the medium of Welsh in the Welsh language schools. And at 11 years of age, really not knowing it until now, until looking back, that's where I probably suffered my first anxiety, mental health issues, although it was something that was never spoken of, or you certainly wouldn't be aware of what they were back then, particularly as a young person, even so much as an adult. Because I was bullied in school. At 11 years of age in the Gwyndraeth Grammar School, I was picked on by an individual for no apparent reason. And it was affecting my life, affecting my education, affecting my well-being. Because I'd become very lonely. I'd spend a lot of time on my own. I would do everything to avoid being in the same place as the bully, which that meant then spending a lot of time on your own, or maybe spending some time with a group of kids that wouldn't be your friends, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. And if any of you have experienced bullying, particularly as a young person, but also as an older person as well, you feel a sense of loneliness, a sense of weakness, ashamed, embarrassed. You actually start thinking there's something wrong with you, where actually there isn't. The issues are with the bully themselves, and then they take it out on an individual or people that they feel that they can do. And I was becoming somebody that I would have never been. I was becoming truant. I was lying to my mum and dad, pretending that I was so sick that they would get so worried about me that they would bring the doctor to come out. And I'd even lie to the doctor, pretending I was ill. I would do anything to avoid going to school or being in the situation where the bully would be. It was fearful. It was scary. I was frightened to death every single day. And then if I had to go to school, I'd be truant. I'd spend most of the day on my own, or I'd spend it with an older group of boys who were truant as well, and they were a type of boys that you would not associate with or spend your time with, and you'd get into trouble. They would peer pressure you into stealing things from the local shop for them. They'd try and force you to smoke cigarettes at 11 years of age. They'd make me drink alcohol at 11 years of age, which I would have never done. And it was a constant fear every day. And then one day the bullying stopped, just like that. I had to go to school one day, couldn't avoid not going and couldn't avoid getting away from school to be truant. And the bully picked on me in the classroom one day, and a couple of my friends in class, they stuck up for me when they saw this happening. And one of my mates, who became my best mate, and was my best mate at the time, really, he gave the bully a right hook and put him on his ass in the classroom, which gave me great pleasure. And that was the end of the bullying. It stopped there and then. And obviously hindsight is a wonderful thing. But looking back then, I didn't realise, and maybe people don't realise, the damage it does to you as an individual, particularly as a young person, how it can affect your life in so many different ways, of which I've just mentioned there now. But also as well in how important it is to deal with these adversities, if somebody is being bullied, to try and speak up about it, although it's difficult, but also for people to be aware around, particularly young people, if something's not quite right, just maybe to ask or encourage them to know that they can share those issues if they are being bullied, because believe me, it is a horrible, horrible time of your life if you are bullied. And it can affect you for the rest of your life. And then when I was working back in school, about 19 years of age, things were starting to change. I was becoming somebody that I had no idea about. I was actually becoming somebody I certainly didn't want to be. And the situation I found myself in the time, in this becoming totally alien to me, something I knew nothing about, was a lot to do with my upbringing. Brought up in a time where things were very different, in the 70s, 80s. Taught by my mum and dad, that when you get older, you get a girlfriend, you get married, then you have children, then you become a grandparent, and that's the way the world keeps on going round. And here I was at 19 years of age. I had a girlfriend at the time, but on occasions, and only on occasions, I was feeling myself attracted to men. And this was something totally alien, something I'd never experienced before, something I never knew about before. And being brought up in an old-fashioned way in rural West Wales at 19 years of age, I had never met or knew of a gay person in person. The only gay people I knew of were some of the very camp characters that were on TV back then in the old sitcoms in the 70s, 80s, and still till today. And I was sitting there watching these programs and thinking to myself, I can't be gay. I don't want to be gay because I'm not like that. I play rugby, I referee rugby. I go over the workingmen's club in the village with my dad for a few pints. I go down the rugby club with my mates and go out on a Saturday night. I've got a girlfriend. I can't be like that. I'm not like that. And then also hearing this derogatory language around you about these very camp gay characters. Oh, bloody gays, it's all wrong. That's totally wrong. Shouldn't be allowed. They shouldn't be alive. Shouldn't be on television. And I was hearing this derogatory language from family members, from friends. And thinking to myself, oh my God, what if I am gay? What if they find out? Will I be able to live with my family? Will I have to move away? Will I have to go away where nobody knows me? And this was a constant worry and fear that I had to live with pretty much every day. It then started triggering mental health issues because I became very worried, suffering from anxiety, spending a lot of time on my own, loneliness because the fear of people finding out if I was in their company. I started drinking a lot, started comfort eating a lot, and I put a lot of weight on. I went up to something like 16 and a half, 17 stone, and I was quite obese. I was overweight, still refereeing at the time. And then I thought, well, I need to lose this weight. Didn't like the way I looked in the mirror, seeing my belly hung over the waist of my trousers, and I was getting paranoid about this. And I wanted to lose this weight. I wanted to have a body and a physique that I would feel comfortable in, that other people would find good to look at, I suppose. And I decided to lose some weight, and I went about it the totally wrong way. I became bulimic, where pretty much after every meal I would eat, or anything I would eat during the day, I'd make myself sick. Sometimes 3, 4, sometimes 5, 6, 7 times a day. Everything that I ate pretty much I went to the toilet to bring back up. And this was a constant circle, day in, day out. I still suffer from bulimia today, but not to the extent I did back then. And I went from something like 16.5 stone down to something like 11.5 stone. It was very thin, very pale. So then I wanted to put some weight on. I wanted to put some muscle on. So I went to the gym, started doing some weight training, and I then went up to something like 16 stone, muscular. And then after a couple of weeks in the gym, I started using steroids. And then I read in a magazine that somebody had written in this magazine, and you still see it being written today. Somebody had written in and saying an article that homosexuality was an illness that you could be cured from. And the way to be cured from it was that you would need to be chemically castrated. So I thought, I've got a cure for this, because I don't want to be gay. So I made an appointment with my doctor. I went to the doctor and said, look, I think I'm gay, I don't want to be gay, so I want you to chemically castrate me because I want to be cured. And the doctor said, look, Nigel, it doesn't work like that. And I left the doctor's surgery in a far worse state than I'd got in there. My lifeline had been taken away from me now. The next few weeks were hell, absolutely hell. And then one night, I decided, right, there's only one way out of this. And I did something that night that I will regret for the rest of my life. Something that I have to live with for the rest of my life. I left a note from my mum and dad. I didn't tell them why. I left them a note and said that I couldn't carry on living my life anymore. And I'll never forgive myself for what I put my mum and dad through that morning when they got up and read my note and thought that they were never going to see their only child ever again. And I left the house with a couple of boxes of paracetamols, a bottle of whiskey and a loaded shotgun, because I used to work on the farm. I had a shotgun in the house. And I left and I walked around where I was brought up, pretty much looking at everything for the last time, I guess. And my mum and dad, one of them, I don't know until this day, but one of them rang the police. They came out searching for me. And what I actually took to end my life ended up saving me, because I overdosed on the paracetamols, drank the whiskey, and I slipped into a coma. And I have no doubt that if I hadn't done that, then I would have pulled the trigger of the gun. So after a while, they found me on this very, very remote mountain behind where I was brought up and living at the time with my mum and dad still. And when they are looking for people who don't want to be found, they use heat sensors. So they had this heat sensor on this helicopter. So they located me and they knew I had still heat in my body through the heat sensors. So they knew I was either alive or I was, unconscious or dying. But as they came closer, they could see also that I had a shotgun on my chest, pointing at the bottom of my chin. So they now weren't aware whether I was conscious or not, so they wouldn't come anywhere closer in case I would pull the trigger, or worse still, I would point it at anybody who came near. But then they realized as the time went by that I was probably unconscious, because the heat in my body was not getting less. And I was not reacting to anything that they were saying. So anyway, they came closer, realised I was unconscious. I got airlifted to West Wales General Hospital in Carmarthen, where I spent the next sort of 2 or 3 days in intensive care, and then the next sort of week or so in hospital. And after being in intensive care for a couple of days, and after coming round, the doctor came round and he said to me, Nigel, you are a very, very lucky young man. It'd been another 20 minutes and it'd been too late to save you. People came to visit, family and friends. Mum and dad came every day, twice a day. People asking what was wrong, are you okay, do you want to talk about it? And still I wouldn't tell anybody. And then one evening, after visiting hours finished and people left, my mum came back on her own. And she said to me, if you ever do anything like that again, then you may as well take me and your dad with you, because we don't want to carry on our life without you in it. And that's all she said. I started crying, and that was the moment that my life was, that was the moment that my life was saved. And I said to myself, this is who I am. There's no choice here. There are many things in life we can choose. You can choose where you live, what your moral compass is, whether you drink or not, what car you drive, what sport you play, what football or rugby team you support. There are many, many things in life we choose. But our sexuality is not one of them. And I said to myself, I need to accept who I am. And that was the biggest challenge of my life, was accepting who I truly was. Refereeing the World Cup final 6 years ago now, in Twickenham between New Zealand and Australia, the biggest game in world rugby that only happens once every 4 years. The challenge, the pressure on you on refereeing that massive, massive game is unbelievable. But believe me, it was nothing. It was nothing compared to the challenge of accepting who I was. And that, I believe, is the biggest challenge you'll come across in life, is accepting who you truly are, or accepting that there are issues in your life. And it doesn't matter what those issues are. Whatever's triggering the worriness, whatever's triggering the mental health that you may be suffering from, the anxiety, unless you accept that there are issues, whether they're from financial worries, worrying about your job, pressure in work, relationship issues at home, worrying about your children in school, going to university, whatever you worry about, unless you accept that there are issues that you need to address or deal with, then there's no way you can do anything about it. And now I'd accepted what my issues were in my life. That then helped me to deal with the mental health issues. The mental health issues weren't there anymore. The depression wasn't there anymore. There was still the odd occasion of getting worried, getting scared, because I still hadn't told anybody. I was still, pardon me, I was still worried about being found out. And it was affecting my life, living in that constant fear of being found out. So I was still getting days I was feeling down, but not to the extent I was before accepting who I was myself. And it was affecting my happiness in my life. It was affecting also my work. There was nobody out in the macho world of rugby. And as I said earlier, the only out people really were the camp characters. And there was no role model for me to say, well, the person is similar to me, involved in rugby. So I couldn't relate to anybody, which was difficult. It was also making it difficult for me to tell people, because nobody out in the macho world of rugby, what happens if people find out I'm gay? Will I have to give up my refereeing, which is now my job? And that was reality at the time. There was a fear that could happen. And none of us have to make the choice or the decision of living a lie or being honest with people who we are in fear that we may not be able to work in our workplace. But that is still reality today. People still, for whatever reason, have that fear. So I was still living this lie, and it was affecting my refereeing performances. Unless you're happy within yourself and you are allowed to be yourself, there's no way you can be the best at what you can be. Because there's always a little worry, and to be a referee and to do many things, you need to be focused in what you are doing. And if anything affects that focus and that concentration and that enjoyment of it, then it's going to affect your performance. And this was affecting my performance. So the referee manager rang up and he said, look, Nigel, he said, I've got 17 international matches to appoint in November. I have 18 international referees. So one referee is going to miss out, and that referee, unfortunately, is going to be you, because because your performances in the last 2 games were not to the standard we'd expect from a test match referee. And he was right. And I knew that was the case. So I thought that I'd blown it. I'd blown my chance of being an international referee, and certainly having a career of it. And then a week later he rang back and he said, look, Argentina have arranged to play Samoa in an extra game. They'll play on the first Saturday in December, and we're appointing you to that game. But you need to know that if you don't perform in this game, then you won't be selected to referee another test match again. And I thought, right, I have one more chance. And this is my last chance. So after a couple of weeks, I sort of thought about things and thought, right, physically I'm fit. Mentally I'm not, because of this constant worry of living with this burden and this lie. So I decided that the only way to give myself a good chance of performing this game, or one of the main reasons, was I need to be honest with people. I've been brought up with mum and dad to be honest, and here I am lying to the people that matter to me most. So I told my mum. That's the first person I told. The only person, well, not the only person to be fair, there are other people and my dad as well, but this was one person for sure that I could trust, no matter what. It yet still took me the best part of 3.5 hours to tell my mum that one word, that I was gay. To my mum, the person that I could pretty much tell anything to. And she cried, I cried, and she said, look, it doesn't matter, she said. I still love you as my son and nothing will change. Maybe your life will change, things will be different for you now. There may be tough times for you, she said, in other people dealing with it. Even with your dad having to accept and not knowing what it's all about. And I let my mum tell my dad. It took her a couple of days, but my dad was fine with it. He just didn't know what it was all about. And my dad is still alive and is my best friend today. My mum passed away now, coming up to 12 years ago. I then went to see my line manager to see if I would be able to carry on refereeing. And he said, look, he said, I support you 100%. And the Welsh Rugby Union will support you 100%. And they did. And they still do today, as do the whole of world rugby. I went to Argentina with the weight of the world lifted off my shoulder. And when people tell you, or sometimes you may have experienced this yourself, some people say, oh, you look like you've got the weight of the world in your shoulder, or sometimes you feel like you've got the weight of the world in your shoulder. When you take that feeling away, it's the most unbelievable feeling. You have a spring in your step, happiness, life is good, how it should be, enjoying what you're doing. So I went to Argentina, happy within myself. And I did something that day, knowing, walking out into that field, that if I didn't perform, I would never referee an international match again. So as I walked on that field, I did something for the first time that day, which I've done every single game I've refereed since, from the World Cup final to the local under-13s kids game. Every single game I referee now, when I walk out onto that pitch, as I cross the white of the touchline, I said to myself, don't fuck it up. And I didn't. The game went well. I had a great review from my performance reviewer. And since that game, I went on to referee what at the moment is a record 98 international test matches, a record 6 European Cup finals, a record 6 Pro 14 finals, a record 120 European matches, and a record 190 Pro 14 matches. I wouldn't have been able to achieve any of that, including the refereeing the World Cup final, if I hadn't accepted who I was, and just as important, if I hadn't been allowed to be who I truly was. Because unless you're happy within yourself and allowed to be yourself, there's no way you can excel and be the best at what you do. We don't live in a perfect world. We never have and we never will. We will never be perfect at who we are. We'll never be perfect at what we do. I can never go out on that rugby field and referee a match and make no mistake. The better you are, then the less mistakes you make. And the less mistakes you make, the chances are that those mistakes you make don't matter. They don't affect the game, they don't affect you, they don't affect anybody else. So we're not going to be perfect. So don't try and let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Don't try and make a perfect workplace. Never lose the ability for people to be themselves. Never lose the humour, the laughing, the joking, the little bit of leg pulling. Once we lose the ability to laugh with each other, laugh at ourselves, then life is going to be a pretty dark place to be. So make the environment you work in, make the environment that you live in at home, make it a happy place, make it a joyful place. Try not to make it a perfect place. Make it a good place. And let me leave you with this thought. Not only do we have a responsibility in what we say or what we do, we sometimes have more of a one. We stand by and we say or do nothing.